Hello and what is up YouTube? It's G3Iron, your balding, beardless buddy, here to guide you through today's discussion and hopefully answer some questions about... Excuse me? What are you doing here?
Being less bald and more helpful than you.
Whoa, are you like Smeagol, Gollum, like the half-naked creature hobbit thing from Lord of the Rings?
No, that's not us. Yes, it is us. We're a nice, helpful friend to Path of Exile players. We want to offer some helpful advice.
Excuse me there. Hi, Mr. G3Iron and Smeagol.
Don't interrupt us, nasty, stupid frog thingy. No, he's nice. What does he need?
I just needed some help with some questions today. Guys, this is getting really kind of strange and weird. But sure, Kermit, you've got a couple of questions. Go ahead and ask, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Yes, ask us. Smeagol likes to help.
Well, sometimes Path of Exile just isn't fun, and sometimes I've had some really bad leagues, and, could anybody help me? Absolutely, Kermit. Those are great questions. We're going to dive into today's discussion and try and answer Kermit's questions about, well, different things and different factors that can essentially ruin your league. If at any point in time you want to jump ahead or jump back and see any of the points that we've discussed here today, there should be some floating timestamps here and some chapters available for you down below. And of course, there's always more information down below in the video description about anything that we reference or cite here today. If you're new around here and you've enjoyed our discussion video today, you can of course like, subscribe, and ding the bell to be notified about future video discussions just like this one. And if you've been around for a while and would like to join our Discord or support our channel through YouTube or through Patreon, we would be much obliged. In my experience of all the possible things that can ruin your league, the number one thing that can ruin your league is not being prepared. When a league first launches, there's lots of different ways that you can be prepared in order to have a successful and fun league experience. Now, there's some level of give and take here for what it means to be prepared for some people might actually look very unprepared for others. What might be very prepared for some people might be super duper over prepared for others. So there's some wiggle room in here, but there's a couple of ways that you can essentially not be prepared and ensure that you are going to have a bad time and a ruined league. When you first start sitting down to plan out your league experience, if you are doing that while you're already playing through the 10-act story campaign, that is probably an indicator that you are underprepared for the league. One of the ways to prepare for the league is simply to begin gathering data about the upcoming Path of Exile League and begin making plans accordingly. There's that old quote or proverb, something about the only way for a failure to occur in planning is to fail to plan in the first place, and that is certainly true with Path of Exile and all of the different diverse ways that you can, in essence, prepare yourself ahead of time to enjoy the experience of a new Path of Exile League launch. Now, I'm not just talking about League starter stuff here, right? All of us play Path of Exile at different paces, and we all might even jump in at different points in time in a league cycle. Not everybody is able to play Path of Exile during the moment or the minute that a new patch drops, and different players play on different platforms like PC and multiple different ways on console. So not every player is starting to play Path of Exile at the exact same time. But what does matter for all players across all platforms, across all time zones, across all ways of playing Path of Exile is making sure that if you've got a question that can be answered ahead of time, that you begin asking that question prior to your league experience beginning, so that way you can go in as prepared as possible to tackle whatever problem or whatever challenge that was raised by your question might be. One concrete example of this is simply not using the tools at your disposal. I'm talking very basic tools like YouTube, tools like Discord, tools like forums. If you've got a question about a particular gameplay mechanic, whether that's related to a league mechanic, whether that's related to a character class that you are playing, or a specific build archetype that you are planning on filling out and playing and piloting for yourself in Path of Exile, if you can ask questions about how your character is going to progress, about what sorts of content your character is built for, or what sort of content you might be preparing to take on, it is best to ask those questions ahead of time so that way you are not running into the oncoming steam train which crushes people of information, which is Path of Exile. Knowledge is power in PoE, and so being prepared with questions and with answers ahead of time before you actually sit down to play Path of Exile will save you a lot of frustration, a lot of headaches, and a lot of slowing down and breaking up your flow of actually playing the game when the time comes for you to actually play the game. So prepare for your character, prepare for the league, prepare with information and with knowledge that is going to set you up for a good and fun experience in the upcoming league. The good news for you is that if you're already watching this video, chances are you're already doing some prep work prior to the league launch, and that's good news. So you're already starting off with a strong foot just by interacting and by seeking out more information about the upcoming 321 Crucible League right here, right now. A second thing that will ruin a league for any player, it doesn't matter how strong their build is, it doesn't matter how overpowered their character is, it doesn't matter how many friends they're playing with, how many people are watching them play on Twitch or YouTube, etc. None of that stuff matters. What matters is whether or not you're having fun. I've known players, and I've been a player myself, where I've interacted with particular game mechanics. I've played particular characters that are very, very strong. I've enjoyed the general theme and the general execution of particular things going on inside of Path of Exile. But for one reason or another, maybe I could explain it, maybe I couldn't, I simply wasn't enjoying my time in the game. And if you are not having fun while you're playing Path of Exile, that's gonna ruin your league. That is, by definition, an unfun experience. I cannot stress this enough. This is a very common mistake, particularly among players who are highly competitively driven, players who are very goal-oriented. Oftentimes, fun is something that is not necessarily they experience on the journey, but is more of a payoff that they reach once they hit their destination. Oftentimes, that is a recipe for burnout. If you are not having fun while you are playing a video game, I'm going to sound arrogant for a moment, that is the wrong way to play a video game. That statement should hold true for about 99% of us who don't play games as a job. Obviously, if you're playing games as a job, then hopefully you're having fun and enjoy your work. And if you're not, hopefully it's providing enough income for you and your family. So that way, when you clock into your work and boot up your video game, it's at least worth it in your paycheck. For the rest of us, not having fun spells doom for our time in almost any game. It is just a matter of time before our fun meter and our burnout meter and our exhaustion meter is going to run on empty or on fumes. I myself have been there in the past with multiple different games. If you're not having fun, you really can't extend your time in a game and all of a sudden bring back a flicker, a spark, or some sense of enjoyment of the game without first diagnosing and walking through what might sound almost spiritual-esque, but a process by which you identify what is unfun and what's going on in your experience to make your experience unfun. A very practical way that this plays out in Path of Exile, and an example of it, is your particular build choice and the active skill gems that you are using while you're playing Path of Exile. There are plenty of builds out there in Path of Exile land where you could pick a great build guide. It's got awesome recommendations. It's got wonderful gearing options. It could be the Magnifica, just beautiful build guide in terms of power, in terms of curve, in terms of learning, in terms of you as a player enjoying everything you're looking at until you actually sit down and begin playing and you realize, oh, this active skill is actually really annoying and I just hate it. I can't do it. This is not fun. You might be taking on content super fast. You might be taking down new goals and pushing new boundaries of things you've never experienced before. But if you're using an active skill that is very tangibly, very viscerally sending your brain and your person an experience that is unfun, doesn't really matter all of those other things that you're pushing through. You're just not having fun, and that's not really the point of the game. So a solution to this is to make sure that you're playing a build or playing a skill that you enjoy. I know plenty of players who play what might be considered, air quotes here, heavy air quotes, suboptimal builds and suboptimal skills because they enjoy them. Guess what? Those players, they're winning in the long run. They're having fun with their hobby time, playing a game that they can enjoy. Don't force yourself to play something that you don't enjoy, so that way you can potentially enjoy something else along the way. Enjoy your experience. We're all playing a video game here. If you're not having fun, start diagnosing why you're not having fun and get back to the having fun part. The third thing I've heard from other players and experienced myself when I've had ruined leagues in the past is setting goals and then not reaching those goals. That can be really, really devastating to your own player motivations and your own player psyche. If you've got goal X, Y, or Z, but you're somewhere on the alphabet spectrum of getting down to like D and G and H and kind of in the middle somewhere, that can really hurt. That can really be a demotivator for you. It can feel like you are running a race and the finish line is just never getting closer. That can cause burnout real quick to the point where you're playing a character, one moment having a great time, and then you realize just how far you are away from your destination, and you simply stop and you realize this is awful and I'm not going to have any fun trying to pursue that goal. Not reaching a goal can have that sort of preemptive effect on you, but it can also have a post or after effect on you, whereby not reaching a goal, you then look back and you go, you know, I set a goal for myself, I didn't reach it, it wasn't really fun, and then you come back to the game and you try a different goal, and that also ends up not being fun. It's like a lingering memory that is hanging on to you and you're not able to shake it. This is going to sound super elementary. It's going to sound super duper basic, but oftentimes this is what happens in our own player and human psychology when we're interacting with games and we're not having a good time and we are essentially ruining our league. We are oftentimes setting goals that are beyond what we're actually capable of reaching, or goals that are so far beyond our reach. It's not just that it's incrementally beyond our ability to reach it, it's exponentially beyond our ability to reach it. And so in order to adjust and adapt and have a much better time, what you need to do is essentially adjust your goals to something that maybe you have reached in the past, or maybe something that's just beyond something that you've reached in the past. Some tangible examples in a Path of Exile environment is, of course, the mapping system and the various endgame bosses that are available in Path of Exile. Let's say, for instance, you're a relatively new player to Path of Exile and you've played the 10x story campaign a couple of times, but you've never really pushed into maps before. Maybe set a goal for yourself to reach tier 3 maps for the first time in your playing career. Then maybe next league, set a goal for yourself to maybe reach yellow maps for the first time in your career. In future leagues, you can continue to push on, gradually stretching out that particular goal. If you want to set yourself up to ruin your league, simply have played through the 10x story campaign like once, never interacted with maps, and then expect of yourself and set the goal of beating every single pinnacle boss in Path of Exile within like the first week. That is not going to be a goal that is reasonable to expect of yourself, of any player as they are first coming into Path of Exile. Set yourself some goals that you can hit, or goals that are just outside of what you think you can hit, and continue to aspire towards those goals, set a plan for you to reach them, and then have fun as you're on your journey of either reaching, exceeding, or not quite reaching your goals, but maybe next time you'll be able to improve and get that goal on the next league. A fourth thing that contributes to ruining a league is just not setting any goals whatsoever. This is one of the most common things that comes up amongst players in the guild, as well as comments and feedback on YouTube and Discord and streaming. Oftentimes, players will say something along the lines of, you know, I would rather watch someone else take on such and such content rather than play it for myself. And oftentimes in dialogues with players in these scenarios, you'll ask questions about what their goals were when they were playing Path of Exile, and they might just say, well, I didn't really set a goal for myself, or I really didn't have anything that I was aiming for, and so the game was a bit overwhelming. This is particularly true in Path of Exile, where knowledge is power, and knowledge comes at you like water through a fire hydrant in Path of Exile. It is just on all the time. There is an overwhelming amount of knowledge in Path of Exile. One way to make sure that you ruin your league is to not set any goals and just kind of ethereally go into Path of Exile with no specific ideas in mind about progression, about characters, about anything that you would like to experience in terms of content or in terms of various styles and approaches of league mechanics that you'd like to take on or interact with or even be able to unlock. While there are players out there who can absolutely set too many goals or goals that are way far outside of their reach, and that can demotivate and ruin an entire experience in Path of Exile, there's also players who can essentially go into Path of Exile like it's a road trip with no maps, no GPS, also no money for gas, and just start driving. That is not a very good way to reach somewhere on a destination for any length of time that's longer than whatever the gas that's in your tank can carry you. While you might need gas to carry a car, players oftentimes need goals in order to continue to enjoy an experience in a vastly overwhelming and massively content-filled game like Path of Exile. So set some goals for yourself. Some basic ones, some easy ones, maybe some that you think are stretch goals, and then begin to plan accordingly and enjoy your league as you pursue those goals. A fifth thing that can ruin a league in Path of Exile, and is a very common mistake, is having unreasonable expectations of a league. We've already talked about goals and how players can have maybe unreasonable goals or stretch goals for themselves, but this is talking about having unreasonable expectations of the game itself. In other words, you come into Path of Exile, you've heard it's a game that maybe has got a lot of loot in it, it's got some really awesome abilities and some really awesome builds that can simply screen clear multiple different screens with the single press of one active button. Then you come in, you're playing Act 1, and you go, what? There's like one guy outside this town and his name is Hillock and I can't explode him. It takes multiple hits to take him down and my character's basically naked and I've got a pathetic weapon and a skill gem that I didn't even want or choose to use. What is this? Setting up for yourself unreasonable expectations is a great way to ruin your own experience in the game, and it's something that I have done in the past when I've viewed Path of Exile expansions, when I've viewed certain character archetypes and then tried to progress and build out my characters, and I'm just sitting there scratching my head frustrated going, man, I must be doing something wrong here because I really thought my build ought to be doing X, Y, or Z, and it's not even doing A, B, or C yet. What am I doing wrong? When you start asking yourself that question, what am I doing wrong? Oftentimes that can be a demotivating factor. For some people, it can be a motivating factor to then go and plan out answers and seek out information and maybe find some help to be able to answer that question. But for many players, it's simply a demotivator that goes, you know what? My expectations of this game were one thing, my experience of the game is the other, and guess what? Your dissatisfaction with something in life and in games is directly proportional to your expectations and to your experience of that thing. So if you've set super duper lofty expectations of Path of Exile and you think that divine orbs, exalted orbs, chaos orbs, all sorts of different high tier drops ought to just be dropping for you all the time. This is oftentimes what we call in the guild chat a sense of entitlement, where players are just going, I've played for X number of hours and nothing has dropped for me. Well, sometimes having unreasonable expectations can lead to having an unfun time. Does that mean you shouldn't have any expectations for the game? No, it means you should have some expectations for the game, and then you should go in and judge your experience of the game in comparison with your expectations for the game. And then in the future, maybe if there's a wide gap, maybe you need to alter your expectations, or you're going to need to do a lot of work to alter your own experience to be able to match up with expectations. It's oftentimes a lot easier for us as human beings to control our expectations than to control our experience and the outcome in an RNG-based game, which is very heavily influenced by lots and lots and lots and lots of layers of RNG like Path of Exile. This is a learned skill, so I will say this is not like an absolutely deadly, unfun thing that happens. If this happens to you, maybe for one league where you had unreasonable expectations, hopefully, as it is a learned skill, you'll be able to adjust your expectations for future leagues or even future characters and adjust from there. That's where I oftentimes am at, where I'm trying out different characters. I have one expectation of it, that it will be fun, it will be awesome, it will be exciting. I go in and it's kind of a not that fun experience, and I just adjust my expectations and go, you know what? It's not a minion build, and so it's not all of the things that I thought and I hoped it would be. I'm just going to go back and play my minion build now. It's a lot easier for me and for you as a player to adjust our expectations than it is to do the hard work of adjusting our experience. That being said, adjusting your experience is also something else you can do. It just takes time, and it takes the ability to process the absolute fire hydrant of information that is Path of Exile. If you're able to do that, you're going to have a great league. A sixth thing that can ruin a league experience is making excuses rather than making progress. This is a massive one, and I see it oftentimes. It comes up about builds, it comes up about drops, things like this, phrases like this. Imagine, could you have ever seen anybody in guild chat or global chat or in Discord or on YouTube and Twitch comments saying anything like this? You know, I would have had a much more fun league if I would have had a Mirror of Calandra drop for me, or I would have had a much better league if I would have known about such and such meta build ahead of time. Well, those are really excuses. Maybe the reason why you didn't know about such and such meta build is because it really wasn't a meta build yet and you didn't have access to the knowledge of that build. that's kind of an excuse. Now, of course, if you failed to prepare, that goes back to number one. Maybe you could have prepared better and had a better league. But if you're making an excuse about your own experience and your own failing to prepare, rather than simply making progress, that's going to end up killing your player motivation and leading to a bad league. Instead of saying something like, man, I didn't get the jump on that particular meta build, or I wish I would have known about it, or why didn't more currency drop for me? Instead of making those excuses, make progress. If drops aren't coming for you for particular currency amounts or particular desired outcomes, then maybe alter your approach. Is there a different style of content that you enjoy, that you can interact with, which maybe will produce better results? An example of this is if you are farming for a headhunt and you haven't had a doctor card drop for you, maybe instead of farming for a doctor card that's going to be relatively rare to drop, maybe you could instead farm for the nurse card, which might be a little bit more common for it to drop for you, and thereby incrementally grow your experience. You're still making progress towards your goal rather than just making excuses of running hundreds of maps and never having a doctor card drop for you. The same thing can be said for characters as well. If you recognize throughout your gameplay experience, this character is not working for me, I'm not having fun, rather than just bashing your head into the wall and hoping, yeah, it's going to get fun at some point, make progress. One way to do that is by pivoting your character or by playing another character entirely. Unfun time spent on one character that's just like wishing that it will eventually become fun is a oftentimes waste of time, whereas at least progression that's made on a character that you are enjoying is indeed making progress towards your goals and towards your plans that you've already set out for the league. Stop making excuses and start making progress. The seventh and final thing that can ruin a league is not making use of available tools. There are lots of players who don't like going through the 10x story campaign, and they are trying their best to be able to progress through the 10x story campaign as quickly as possible. Are you aware there's a lot of different community-driven tools that will help you in terms of layout guides, in terms of knowing exactly which vendors to go to for your specific build guide? There's even websites where you can plug in your POB and it will give you a walkthrough of exactly which quests you need to do in which order through the 10x story campaign. There's all sorts of wonderful leveling help tools that are available for the player who doesn't want to spend an extra exorbitant amount of time in the 10x story campaign. Another example of not making use of tools is path of building. I cannot tell you, I'm just going to laser focus in on this one. All right, just walk with me on this one. I cannot express the level of sadness that players have when they come to me and they go, "What's going on with my build?" And I say to them, "Can you share with me your POB?" And they go, "What's POB?" Now, if they're a new player, that's understandable. They don't necessarily know about what POB is. But oftentimes when I ask them, "Hey, what's your POB? Can you send me a POB?" They'll go, "Yeah, I just don't like to use that sort of stuff. I just don't want to really get into the details of it. But can you fix my build for me?" Oh, that's going to ruin your league. There's lots of tools that are available to you as a player to equip you to be able to answer the questions, the problems, and the challenges that you are experiencing in your particular path of exile character and in your particular league with your particular goals in mind. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't awesome communities and players out there that are willing to help. I love helping new players and I love helping veteran players walk through their builds, walk through their characters. It's oftentimes a really fun discovery sort of process to dig into the challenge of what a character is trying to do and then why isn't it actually reaching for the goals and for the potential that the character and the build guide essentially has laid out for it. That's really, really fun. But you know what we've got to do in order to reach those goals and answer the questions players have? We've got to use the tools that are available to us to use. It's one thing to say, I don't have access to those tools or I didn't know about those tools. I've got some sympathy for players, especially who are playing on like one screen and one monitor and alt tabbing all the time is an absolute headache. But oftentimes players are like, yeah, I just don't want to use tools. Can you do that for me? That's going to lead you ultimately to a bad time. You're not playing the game anymore. You're essentially going out and asking somebody else, can you do my homework for me so I can get back to having fun? And that ultimately means you're not having fun while you're waiting on someone else to do your PoE homework. That's no fun. It's no fun for the person doing your PoE homework. It's no fun for you. It is fun if you can take your questions, Ask them sincerely, interact with the tools that you've been given to hopefully improve your build, and then get back to playing Path of Exile, blasting through all of the goals that you've set and unlocking new stretch goals for yourself, for your character, and all the while having a wonderful League experience playing and having fun, enjoying the hobby of your choice, video games, and in particular Path of Exile. Well, we'd love to see down below in the comments any suggestions that you've got about how to avoid ruinous League starts. Maybe if you've got a story of a particularly bad League start that was horrific for you that you learned from, I invite you to share those below down in the comments. I'm sure that would help out Kermit and other community members in Path of Exile and in the G3 community at large. So I appreciate any of those comments below. I'll be interacting with them as I have time to throughout the day. And of course, as always, I hope the upcoming 321 Crucible League is the League, a Mirror of Calandra, drops for you.
Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.